It was 11:47 at night, and I was sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage, eating a granola bar I found at the bottom of my bag because I hadn't had a real meal in 2 days. The engine was off. The garage was cold and smelled like exhaust and concrete. I had just spent 14 hours watching my husband go through his second round of chemotherapy, and I needed 5 minutes before I walked back in there and pretended to be strong again. My name is Sarah. I'm 31 years old. And that night I made the mistake of opening my phone. I typed out a message to my family group chat. It wasn't dramatic. I wasn't asking for much. I just wrote, "Marcus is having a really rough night. Chemo hit harder this time. If anyone's thinking of us, please send a prayer. We could really use it right now." I stared at it for a second, then hit send. Then I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and went back inside. By the time I checked it again, 2 hours later, sitting in a vinyl chair next to Marcus's bed while he slept, my mum had sent a string of heart emojis. My younger brother hadn't responded at all. And my aunt, my dad's older sister, the one we called the backbone of the family, had posted a photo to her Instagram story. It was a picture of her and my uncle at a restaurant downtown, candles on the table, wine glasses raised. She'd tagged the location, some new steakhouse in a city. The caption said, "Life is beautiful. Count your blessings." I sat there in the blue half-dark of that hospital room and I read that caption 3 times. Have you ever reached for someone in the worst moment of your life and felt your hand close around nothing? Leave me a message in the comments. I want to hear your story. Because that night, I finally understood something I'd been too afraid to look at for years. My family wasn't the family I thought they were, and the unraveling of that belief was going to cost me everything and give me back something I didn't even know I'd lost. Let me back up. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 4 years when he was diagnosed. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2. The doctor said the word lymphoma, and I felt the floor tilt. Marcus just nodded slowly, like he was processing a complicated work email, and asked what the treatment plan looked like. That's who he is. Steady in a way I've never been able to fully replicate. We live in Columbus, Ohio. Neither of us is from money. Marcus is a physical therapist and I work as a social worker for a county family services agency. We make enough. We save carefully. We have a mortgage on a small house with a backyard Marcus keeps threatening to turn into a garden but never quite gets around to. Normal life. Good life. My family is based mostly about 2 hours away, in the Cleveland area where I grew up. My mum, my dad, they divorced when I was 12. My aunt on my dad's side, my brother, a handful of cousins. We did holidays together, group chat birthdays, the kind of family that seems close until you actually need something. My aunt is the gravitational center of my dad's side. She has been since before I can remember. She's not warm exactly. She's capable. She organizes the Thanksgiving seating. She decides where Christmas is held. She remembers who got what gift last year and makes sure it's evenly distributed. She runs her own insurance brokerage. She sits on the board of 2 local nonprofits. She shows up to every family event looking like she spent 2 hours getting ready, because she did. Everyone defers to her. Everyone asks her opinion first. I grew up thinking that's just what an aunt was. What I didn't fully understand until Marcus got sick is what all that control actually cost the people around her. I'd always been the soft one in the family. Not soft in a mean way. They'd never say that directly. But soft in the way they'd use a word like sensitive when they meant unreliable. I'd gone into social work instead of something more stable. I cried at movies. I talked about feelings in a way that made my aunt's jaw tighten slightly, like I'd said something mildly inappropriate. When Marcus and I decided not to have children right away, she asked with perfect politeness if I was sure that was wise given my tendencies toward anxiety. I didn't ask her what she meant. I already knew. So when Marcus was diagnosed and I reached out to the family, I told myself I wasn't expecting much. I lied to myself about that for about 3 weeks. The first round of chemo was in February. I messaged the group chat. My mum came down for 2 days, which I was grateful for. My aunt texted, thinking of you both. Let us know if you need anything. That last sentence, let us know if you need anything, is the great American social placeholder. It means nothing. It's a closed door dressed up as an open one. Nobody came. Marcus's own family, his mum, his sister in Pittsburgh were there constantly. His mum basically moved into our guest room for the first 2 weeks. She cooked. She cleaned. She drove Marcus to appointments when I had to work, which I still had to do because we needed my income and my health insurance more than we'd ever needed it in our lives. My family was 2 hours away and they didn't come. I kept sending updates. Marcus finished his second infusion. He's exhausted but keeping food down. My dad, who I love but who has always processed difficult things by pretending they aren't happening, would respond with a thumbs up. Sometimes I hang in there, kiddo. My brother, who is 26 and still acts 20, went radio silent for stretches of weeks. My aunt would occasionally respond with something brisk and practical. Are you coordinating with the insurance properly? Make sure you're tracking every EOB. Not once did she ask how I was doing. I started to notice things. My aunt posted to Facebook fairly regularly a non-profit gala she attended, a weekend trip with friends to a lake house in Michigan, a photo of her and my dad and some cousins at a family dinner I hadn't been invited to or even told about. The caption said, "These people. Grateful always." I looked at that photo for a long time. Marcus was 3 weeks into treatment and I was surviving on coffee and the 15-minute breaks I allowed myself in the hospital parking garage, and my family was having a dinner in Cleveland that they hadn't thought to mention to me. I stopped sending updates after that. I just stopped. I had nothing left over for people who gave me nothing back. The question that started to eat me alive wasn't the medical one. Marcus's prognosis was actually reasonably good, and I held on to that like a handhold on a cliff. No, the question that woke me up at 2 a.m. and wouldn't let me go was different. It was smaller and larger at the same time. Why am I so easy to forget? I didn't have an answer. I just had that parking garage and my granola bar and the silence of people who said they loved me. Then, about 6 weeks into Marcus's treatment, my phone started blowing up. I was in the middle of a home visit for work. I can't really leave in the middle of those. And I watched my screen light up over and over from my bag. 15 texts. Then 20. Then my mum calling. Then my brother, which was unusual enough to make my stomach drop, because my brother almost never calls. I finished the visit. I sat in my car outside a stranger's apartment complex in the February cold, and I called my brother back. He picked up immediately. He sounded rattled, which he almost never does. He's the easygoing one. Nothing rattles him. The fact that something had rattled him made every muscle in my body go tight. "Where have you been?" he said. "I've been calling for 2 hours. I was working. What happened? Is it Mom?" "No." A pause. "It's Aunt. She had a heart attack this morning. She's at Cleveland Clinic. They got to her in time. They think she's stable, but it's bad. Dad's there. Everybody's there." I sat with that for a second. My aunt, the family backbone. Stable but bad. "Okay," I said. "Okay. Is Dad okay?" "He's shaken up." Another pause, and then his voice shifted slightly. Not the worried brother anymore. Something more careful. "He's asking why you're not here." Something inside me went very still. "He's asking why I'm not there. He said he's been trying to reach you. He said he gets that Marcus is sick, that this is family and—" "Stop." My voice came out quieter than I expected. Quiet in a way that scared me a little. "Stop right there. Where has he been for 6 weeks? Where has any of them been? I have a husband going through chemotherapy and not one person has driven 2 hours to sit with me. Not once. Not a single visit. And now Dad is hurt that I'm not there?" The silence on the other end of the line was long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. "Sarah," my brother finally said, "that's not, I mean, I know I've been bad about reaching out, I know, but Aunt has been coordinating things on that end. She said you wanted space. She told us you had a system in Marcus's family, and you specifically said you didn't want visitors. She said it was too stressful, that it was better to give you room. I heard the words. I passed them one by one. She said you wanted space. She said you didn't want visitors. She said it was too stressful. I thought about my aunt's Facebook posts. The gala, the lake house, the family dinner I wasn't invited to. She said that, I repeated. Yeah, she told Dad. She told all of us, I think. She said she was in close contact with you and you were managing well and you'd reach out when you needed us. I have texted that group chat, I said carefully, almost every week for 6 weeks. I sent you updates every time Marcus had an infusion. I have never once said I didn't want visitors. I would have given anything for someone to come. Another silence. I didn't know that, my brother said quietly. Sarah, I didn't know. My sister-in-law, Marcus's sister Priya, is a hospital administrator in Pittsburgh. When I called her that evening and told her what I'd just found out, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, very carefully, "Do you want me to drive up this weekend?" "Yes," I said. "Please." She came, and she brought her legal pad because Priya is nothing if not systematic. We sat at my kitchen table on a Saturday morning with coffee, and she helped me reconstruct the timeline. Every group chat message I'd sent, every non-response, the dates of my aunt's social media posts, the family dinner photo, the timeline of who had contacted me directly versus who had clearly been waiting for a signal from my aunt that it was okay to reach out. It mapped almost perfectly. The last time my dad had texted me directly, not in the group chat, but directly, was 3 days before I'd heard my aunt had been telling people I wanted space. After that, he'd gone almost silent. A few group thumbs ups. Nothing else. She cut the line, Priya said. She was looking at my phone, at the timeline we'd built. She positioned herself as the person managing your situation, and then she just didn't. And everyone else deferred to her, so they all stepped back. But why? I said. Why would she do that? Priya looked at me for a moment. You tell me, has she ever liked Marcus? I thought about that. Really thought about it. My aunt had been polite to Marcus the way she was polite to most things she'd already decided weren't quite right, courteous surface, cooler underneath. She'd made a comment once, early in our relationship, about how Marcus seemed like a wonderful person, but the two of us had different orientations towards stability. I'd thought she meant professionally. Now I wondered. She controls the information, Priya said. That's her whole thing, right? She's the one everyone goes to. She's the one who knows everything. She's the one who decides what the family knows and when. If Marcus is sick and you're struggling and people are rallying around you, she's not the center of that. And if she's not the center, she doesn't know what to do with herself. I didn't want to believe it. I sat with it for a couple of days. Then Priya forwarded me a screenshot. She'd reached out to my cousin, my aunt's daughter, just to check in, and in the course of that conversation my cousin had mentioned, without apparently thinking much of it, that her mum had told the family I was not doing well emotionally, and that Marcus's illness had really destabilized me, and that the best thing they could do was give me space and not add to my burden. My cousin said it like it was settled fact, like she'd been told this and absorbed it and filed it away. She said I was not doing well emotionally. I read that twice. Then I put the phone down and I stood at my kitchen window for about 5 minutes looking at Marcus's never-finished garden and feeling something very cold move through me. She hadn't just told them to stay away. She'd given them a reason. She built me a diagnosis. Emotionally destabilized. It had just enough clinical plausibility to make people nod and defer and not dig further. Because who wants to be the one who pushes a struggling person over the edge? I thought about all the times my aunt had used the word sensitive when she talked about me, all the times she'd referenced my anxiety. She'd been building that file for years. When she needed to use it, it was right there, ready. Priya helped me draft the message. I thought about doing it by text or by phone, but I wanted them to see me. I wanted there to be no room for interpretation, no room for my aunt to summarize what I'd said after the fact and sand the edges down into something manageable. I asked my brother to set up a video call. He was quiet when I asked. He'd had a few days to sit with what I'd told him, and I could hear the guilt in his voice when he spoke. He'd also, I found out, done his own quiet investigation, called our cousin independently, talked to my dad. He'd found the same shape I'd found. He agreed to set up the call. It was a Sunday afternoon. Marcus sat next to me on the couch. He'd had a rough week, but he insisted on being there. He held my hand and didn't say much. I needed him in the room. My brother had gotten everyone together at my dad's house. My dad, my aunt, home from the hospital now, moving carefully, looking smaller than I remembered her. My brother, my cousin, my uncle. When the call connected, I saw my dad's face first, and it hit me harder than I expected. He looked tired. He looked like he'd been carrying something. I didn't let that soften me. Not yet. Before anyone says anything, I said, I want to show you something. I picked up my phone and I screen-shared our messages, every update I'd sent to the group chat, the dates, the content. Leo is stable. Marcus finished round 3. We're managing, but it's hard. I walked them through it methodically, one by one, the way Priya had taught me. I didn't cry. I'd cried enough in parking garages. When I finished, I looked directly at my aunt through the screen. I never said I didn't want visitors. I never said I needed space. I never told anyone that Marcus's illness was too stressful for people to come. Can you tell me where that information came from? The room was very quiet. My aunt's expression had gone careful and still. The CEO expression, the managing the situation expression. I was trying to protect you, she said. You've always been fragile under pressure, Sarah. I've known you your whole life. I made a judgment call. You made a judgment call, I repeated, without asking me. You weren't in a position to know what you needed. Look. I cut her off, and my voice was steady, which surprised me. Look at what you did. You told my father I was emotionally destabilized. You told our whole family to stay away. You gave them a reason that sounded clinical enough that nobody questioned it. And then you went to a gala and a lake house and a family dinner. And I sat in a hospital parking garage alone eating granola bars for 6 weeks. I was managing a very complex. You weren't managing anything. You were controlling the story. Because if I was struggling and people were rallying around me, that wasn't a story you got to control. So you made me the problem instead. She opened her mouth. My dad got there first. Margaret. His voice was quiet. Just her name. But the way he said it, something in it had changed. He was looking at her differently. Not the way a little brother looks at a capable older sister who's been running things since their parents passed. Something else. Something I'd never seen on his face before. She closed her mouth. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, Dad, I love you, but I need you to understand that for 6 weeks, when your son-in-law was in chemotherapy and your daughter was breaking apart, you sent me thumbs up emojis. I need you to sit with that. His face crumpled. He put his hand over his eyes. That was enough. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need her to crack and admit everything in front of everyone. Though I could see the composure slipping, the careful neutrality faltering. I had said what was true. The people in that room had heard it. That was all I could do. I ended the call. Marcus put his arm around me. I sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then I started to cry. Finally, for the first time in weeks, the real kind of crying. The kind that comes from relief more than grief. The aftermath was quiet, the way real things usually are. My dad drove down the following Friday. He didn't call ahead, he just texted when he was 20 minutes away, which was unusual enough that I knew it had cost him something. He looked older at my front door. He'd brought flowers, which was so unlike him that they almost broke me completely. We sat in the kitchen and he didn't make excuses. I'd been braced for excuses and he didn't give me any. He just said he was sorry. He said he should have called me directly instead of waiting for information to come through someone else. He said he'd been taking the path of least resistance his whole life and he was tired of where it kept leading him. I didn't forgive him that day. I told him that gently. I told him I loved him and I was glad he came and that we were going to have to build something new because the old thing wasn't working anymore. He nodded. He stayed for 3 hours. Before he left, he asked if he could come back the following weekend to see Marcus. Yes, I said. Please? He came back. He kept coming back. He's been coming back for 7 months now, and it's different. Quieter. Less polished. More real. My brother called me the week after the video call and talked for 2 hours. He'd spent most of those hours already processing the guilt on his own, which is what he does. I let him. When he was done, I said, I don't want an apology as much as I want to know this won't happen again. He said okay. He's been showing up since then too. My aunt sent me a letter about 3 weeks after the call. Handwritten, 4 pages, heavy paper. She does everything with presentation. I read it once and then I set it on the kitchen counter and looked at it for 2 days. It was very thorough. It explained her reasoning. It described her own difficult childhood, her need to manage and protect a family, her belief that she'd acted out of love. It stopped just short of an actual apology and replaced it with an explanation. I didn't respond to it. About a month after Marcus finished his last treatment, we celebrated in the dumbest, most normal way possible. Take-out sushi on the couch. Both of us exhausted and relieved. She showed up at our house. Didn't call. Just appeared at the door with a gift, a very expensive bottle of champagne and an envelope she said was from the family, to help with the medical expenses. I looked at the envelope, and then I looked at her. We don't need it, I said. Thank you. Sarah? Her voice was the one she'd always used with me, the patient but firm voice. The one that said, I know better, and you should know I know better. I am your family. Let me do this. You're my aunt, I said. That's a fact. But it's not the same thing as family. Family is what happened in that hospital parking garage. It's the women from Marcus's work who organized a meal train. It's Priya driving up from Pittsburgh. It's Marcus's mom sleeping in my guest room for 2 weeks. Family is the people who showed up. You didn't. She stood there. The champagne felt suddenly heavy looking in her hand. You are not welcome in this house right now, I said. Maybe that changes someday. I genuinely don't know. But not today. I closed the door. She stood on the porch for a moment. I could see her shadow through the sidelight window, and then she left. Marcus was in the kitchen when I turned around. He was leaning in the doorway watching me. You okay? He said. Yeah, I said, and I meant it, which surprised me. Yeah, I really am. Marcus finished treatment 8 months ago. His last scan came back clear. When the oncologist said the words no evidence of disease, I didn't cry in the room. I held it together through the appointment, through the drive home, through pulling into our driveway. Then I sat in the car and I cried so hard I couldn't breathe for about 3 minutes. Then I went inside and I made dinner. Last month we had people over for the first time since everything happened. Priya came from Pittsburgh. Marcus's mum came. 2 couples who are our closest friends. My dad came and he helped set the table without being asked, which was such a small thing and such a large thing at the same time. My brother came and he was loud and funny and drank too much wine and apologized for it the next day in a text that made me laugh. I looked around that table at some point during dinner and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not relief exactly, not happiness exactly. Something quieter than both of those. Something more like, this is the right size. This is the true version. I grew up being told that family was the most important thing. That blood was everything. That you protected the family name, the family image, the family unit, above almost anything else. I watched my aunt run our family like a company for 30 years, managing information and image and access, And I thought that was just what family was. I thought the coldness was just sophistication. I thought the control was just competence. It wasn't. It was fear. All of it was fear. Fear that if the image cracked, if the information flowed freely, if someone else became the center for a moment, everything would fall apart. So she held it all. And what she held, she strangled. I'm not doing that. I am building something that doesn't need to be managed. It doesn't need a gatekeeper or an image or a carefully curated Facebook presence. It needs people who show up, who text back, who drive 2 hours without being asked when someone they love is in a parking garage eating granola bars at midnight. It needs the true version of the word. Have you ever had to figure out what family actually means to you? Not what you were told it means, but what it actually means in your real life. Have you ever had to let go of the version you inherited and build your own from scratch? I would love to hear your story in the comments. Because I've learned that those stories, the real ones, the hard ones, are the ones worth telling. And you've never been alone in yours. I've thought a lot about why things unfolded the way they did. Not the way you replay something looking for who to blame, but the slower, quieter kind of thinking, the kind that happens when you're washing dishes at night and your husband is asleep in the next room and you finally have enough distance to see the shape of it clearly. Margaret didn't set out one morning and decide to be cruel. I actually believe that. What she did was something more ordinary and in some ways more dangerous than cruelty. She made a series of small choices over many years, choices to be the one who held the information, to be the one people came to be the one who decided what the family knew and when. And those choices calcified into something she couldn't see around anymore. By the time Marcus got sick and I needed people to just show up, she didn't know how to let that happen without it meaning something about her. So she made it mean something about me instead. That's the thing about control. It always costs someone, usually the person who can least afford it. I spent a long time being the family's designated fragile one, and I never really pushed back on it because some part of me believed it. I was sensitive. I did cry at things. I did choose a career that my aunt found embarrassing. I had absorbed her version of me so completely that when she used it against me, I almost didn't recognize what was happening. It took Prior, someone who had no stake in the family mythology, who just looked at the facts on a legal pad, to help me see it for what it was. That's what I mean when I say intelligence isn't just about being smart. It's about being willing to look at something clearly even when looking clearly hurts. Even when it means letting go of a story you've been telling yourself for 30 years. The courage part came later. Closing the door on my aunt that afternoon with the champagne still in her hand, that took something I didn't know I had. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. It was something more like clarity. I knew exactly what was true, and I knew exactly what I was willing to accept going forward. And those two things lined up in a way they never had before. When they line up like that, the decision almost makes itself. My dad is still working on it. He's been showing up for 7 months and some visits are easier than others. He's a man who spent his whole life deferring to his older sister, and he's having to unlearn that in his late 60s, which is genuinely hard. I give him credit for trying. I think the measure of a person isn't whether they got things right the first time. It's what they do when they finally understand they got it wrong. What I know now is that the families we're born into give us a starting point. They give us language and habits and a set of stories about who we are, but they are not the final word. The final word belongs to us, to the choices we make when things get hard, to the people we choose to keep and the dynamics we choose not to carry forward. Marcus is clear. My dad is trying. Pryor drove up from Pittsburgh without being asked. Those are the facts I hold on to. The rest I'm slowly, carefully putting down.